On June 17, 1775, 2,500 British redcoats marched uphill toward a ragtag militia dug in on Breed's Hill. The British expected an easy victory, but what followed became one of the bloodiest battles of the American Revolution. Why did these untrained colonists stand their ground against the world's most powerful army? And how did this defeat become a turning point for American morale? The Battle of Bunker Hill was a shock to both sides. Today we'll break down the tactics, the brutal casualties, and the surprising aftermath that changed the course of the war.
The road to Breed's Hill. By June 1775, Boston was a city under siege. 15,000 New England militia surrounded it. Farmers, blacksmiths, and shopkeepers turned soldiers, with no formal training but a clear message: the fight had begun. Perched above the harbor, the heights of Charlestown gave these colonists a strategic edge, and the British knew it. General Thomas Gage, desperate to break the siege and restore British dominance, dismissed the rebels as nothing more than a disorderly rabble. But he underestimated just how far desperation and determination could go. The colonies had already bled at Lexington and Concord. They had rejected Parliament's late attempts at reconciliation. Now, with the Continental Congress fuming over the coercive acts and British troops digging in, the time for debate was over. General William Howe was chosen to lead 2,500 British troops straight up the hill. His orders were clear: crush the rebellion fast. But the colonists had other plans. Overnight, men under leaders like Joseph Warren built earthworks on Breed's Hill, bracing for what they knew was coming. The British would attack at dawn. The defenders would be ready. Howe's strategy? A frontal assault, straight into fortified defenses, with support from British ships in the harbor. At sunrise on June 17th, redcoats began their march. The hill was steep, the summer air thick. The militia waited, silent, steady, and deadly. Only when the British were within 50 yards did the Americans fire. And when they did, it was brutal. British lines shattered. The first wave fell back in chaos. Howe regrouped. A second attack was coming. The road to Breed's Hill would be soaked in blood, and neither side would ever see this war the same way again.
Blood on the heights. The British weren't finished. After their first assault collapsed in smoke and blood, they launched a second, more organized, more precise. But the colonists still dug in on Breed's Hill, waited once again, silent, steady. And when the redcoats got close enough, the militia opened fire. The result was devastating. British officers dropped, regiments stumbled, even General Howe barely escaped with his life. The British had expected to scatter a mob. Instead, they found themselves facing men who fought like veterans. But inside the American defenses, powder was running low. The colonists knew they couldn't hold out forever. Then came the third assault. Bayonets fixed, drums pounding, no more mercy. The defenders braced for one last stand. Among them stood Joseph Warren, a physician, a leader, and a symbol of resistance. He could have left. He chose to fight. As the British closed in, the Americans fired their final rounds. Then, out of ammunition, they withdrew, not in chaos, but with discipline. The British finally took the hill, but the price was staggering. Over 1,000 killed or wounded, nearly half their force. Joseph Warren was among the dead. Shot during the retreat, his sacrifice became a legend, a martyr for the cause. Later, British General Clinton would write, "A few more such victories would have shortly put an end to British dominion in America." It was a tactical loss for the colonists, but a moral triumph. They had proven they could stand toe-to-toe with the most powerful army on earth. The aftermath and legacy. Word of the battle spread like wildfire. In taverns and town squares, patriots hailed the militia's stand as a heroic moment. The British, meanwhile, faced a sobering truth. This war would not be won easily.
Across the Atlantic, the response was swift. King George III declared the colonies in open rebellion. Congress's olive branch petition ignored. Reconciliation was slipping away. In Boston, a tall Virginian in a blue uniform arrived to take command. George Washington. What he found was far from an army. Undisciplined, undersupplied, but full of grit. The British, now led by General Howe, had problems of their own. Supply lines were long and unreliable, and in their crowded camps, smallpox was spreading fast. Farther south, a new fire ignited. In Virginia, Lord Dunmore offered freedom to enslaved men who fought for the crown. It backfired, pushing Southern planters firmly into the rebel camp. By winter, the seas of Boston had become a stalemate. But something deeper was shifting. Patriot morale was rising. Talk of independence, once whispered, was now being shouted. Washington's leadership brought change. He trained his troops. He inoculated them against disease. He turned a loose collection of volunteers into a fighting force. The British, stuck in outdated tactics, struggled to keep up. Their confidence shaken at Bunker Hill, their strategy in question. By 1776, it was clear. There would be no going back. The Battle of Bunker Hill had become more than a fight over one hill. It was a signal, a message. The American Revolution wasn't a rebellion anymore. It was a war for independence.
The Battle of Bunker Hill was a turning point. It didn't deliver a clear military victory for the Patriots, but it proved something far more powerful, that ordinary colonists could stand their ground against the world's greatest army. It hardened both sides. The British realized this war would be long and costly. The colonists realized they just might have a chance. Now, 250 years later, Bunker Hill still echoes, a symbol of grit, defiance, and the sacrifices that helped shape a nation. What do you think? Was Bunker Hill a defeat, or the Patriots' first real victory? Let us know in the comments below.